Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Loving Ascension. I forgot what we were doing for a moment.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was just making sure I had the right mic on because I heard you differently than usual, but that was good. Okay. So, we talked a lot last week about existing beyond the rules, not thinking we need to be punished if we break a rule or 5 or 1,000, in terms of
Right.
this, in terms of our consciousness and what we're doing and how we're using it, how we're manipulating our creations and all that kind of stuff. So the next step we were talking about is when we, it's funny because like we talk about manifestation and we talk about conscious creation and, there's like the secret and the law of attraction and all that kind of stuff. But all that really is, excuse me, gosh, I'm already yawning, is the energetic alignment of our creative intention, our intended creation, to bringing it and allowing it in here.
Right.
And so the thing is, then we sometimes limit the way we allow ourselves to create or to manifest that here because of all of these beliefs of, oh, I have to do it through suffering. I have to do it through, oh, I can only do this much or this much is enough, because, and that's all underlying worthiness issues. And we, of course, have to look at that. We didn't even make 3 minutes in. And I'm like, unworthiness course,
Right.
or the worthiness course.
Right. Well, the way that I was looking at it several times, but specifically this morning is I was thinking of, you can either think Play-Doh or you can think pasta dough or whatever, and you have it, and that's your creative energy. And then you put it through something, whether it's a pasta machine or, like, as a kid, the extruder, and you slide the template through, and then you create something. So if you think of that extruder as your beliefs or the rules or, even your genes or your ancestry, your hereditary, all that kind of stuff, and it changes its shape.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing if you're saying, okay, I want to make a long tube, and you put that on and you make a long tube. But if you don't realize that your tube mold is damaged and you come up with like a half a tube, and that's like, well, why didn't that work?
Or you come up with a like I don't even know what you would call that shape, a half tube. Good morning, Hashmi. Yeah.
So it's the kind of thing is, if you're aware of what you're pushing your energy through, that's one thing. But if you're unconscious that it's creating it a certain way because there's a rule I'm still following or a belief that I'm holding or whatever it is in your unconsciousness that's affecting it that way, that is almost more powerful than your original intention.
Mm-hmm.
Because it like sits on top of it, or your intention has to flow through it.
Well, yeah, because those are our filters of creation, right?
Exactly.
Because we have these unspoken. So, okay, this is all interrelated in terms of how when we hold beliefs, we limit ourselves. Oh gosh, I gotta stop yawning. We hold our beliefs. We limit ourselves from doing something beyond all expectation or all parameters or beyond, beyond all expectation was what I was trying to think of. So that when we say we hold the belief of this, okay, how about this? I believe, so I would like to create $1 million in my reality. Right.
Right.
And there's a part of me that says, yeah, but I've never been that lucky.
Or I believe somewhere that in order to do that, I have to sacrifice my family. I have to sacrifice my ethics. I have to sacrifice.
Right. There has to be a trick. There has to be a
a price to pay, a
price,
trade-off.
right? Because I mean, think about all of the movies and books that we have about magic, which is really all this, what magic really is conscious creation, which is beyond, it's in the quantum field. And it's saying, okay, so if I believe underneath that I am not worthy of having $1 million, then that will be a immediate brick wall from the bringing that, allowing that creation into this manifest. Right. Good morning, Nicole. And so, okay, so then there's not that. Then there, like, say we get rid of that, but then we have the idea of, oh, I have to sacrifice. Well, then if we have to sacrifice, we'll create something for ourselves to say, okay, I have to choose between this and this, between the $1 million and this, or whatever.
Right.
Then we have things like, oh, that's just too much for one person. And I mean, like, I hear this when we have like the lotteries that get up to like $1 billion. And I hear people literally say, oh, that's just too much for one person to have. And I'm like, and whenever they say that, I'm like, oh no, I would willingly take it. Thank you very much.
Right.
You know, but these are beliefs we hold because we have these things about, you know, money is the root of all evil. So look at all these beliefs. Now you're putting this filter, this colander almost around the allowance of bringing that manifestation. And so it's got to fit in through all of these little holes of, it's got to come to me this way. It's got to come to me through me working myself to the bone. It's got to come through, you know, some particular way. Right. So I have to, and it has to be in a way that I expect it.
Right. Well, and if we step back and then change the words and say, instead of it's got to come through, just say it has to align with. So if you start looking at what you're aligning with and how you're coming into alignment, and as you come into your expanded consciousness, your alignment, and I hate to use the word has to, should, or anything like that, because that's the ego, it naturally changes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So if we back up and start focusing on the alignment and say, okay, my alignment doesn't include the rules, like we talked about last week. It doesn't include beliefs that are limiting. If my alignment comes from my place of divine consciousness, you're a free, clear, open channel.
Right.
And that's what sets up the freedom, is to back it up prior to, you know, that little template that you slide in to push your creation through.
Right. Right. And it makes the whole much bigger.
Right. Right.
There was something I read.
Oh.
There was something I read. Was it Billy Fingers? No, it was something. No, there's something there was a TV thing, a movie I watched, some kids movie or whatever, and how to do it. I don't remember what the name of the movie was, and it was so good. Where they were coming back like through to Earth or whatever, and there was like this portal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had to jump through the portal, and like sometimes like there's like a big hole or a small hole, and it's almost like when you think about bringing things to Earth, which is like manifesting things to these dimensions, right? It's like the whole, how big is your like hole of allowance? Like how big is that portal that you allow it to be brought in, you know? And so and so that money thing is one big one that many people have, right? Because we attach so much to money still. And so there are so many other things though. It's like, well, you know, I have to have this come in this way. I have to have, you know, the only way I'm going to be happy is if I have a job that looks like this and pays me this much or whatever. I'm not going to be happy otherwise. Well, then, wow, that really limited yourself. Right.
Right.
And so it's been a lot of the work that I've done with people over the years has been, well, okay, what is the best scenario that you could think of? Like, what is the best case? What, you know, like, and don't put any rules on it. Like, don't say, well, I can't do this because of this, or I wouldn't be able to do this because of this, but say, if you could do this, you know, blue sky, what would that look like? right? It's almost like then we go, oh, it's like writing a fairy tale. But then we think, because we're so entrained to believe we have to do things through all these rules. We have to do them through all these expectations. And it's like, that'll never happen because that's just not logical. How many times have we
Oh,
said,
right. Well, and it's like, that part of your brain clicks in that goes, well, from a scientific perspective, I have to step through these things to
Mhm,
get from point A to point B.
right, instead of I can just be there.
Right. Or A to Z, I have to go through the full alphabet. I can't just, that would be breaking the rules to
Right,
not step through these things or to not allow science to take its part.
right.
The other thing I was going to mention that we talked about, and it was something you read, so you can speak more to this, but about how if you come to the end of your life and you look back at all the places where you didn't live your full potential, that is the definition of hell.
Yes. Yeah, that was a great post that I saw. It was like, wow, I love the context that was put in it. It's like, yeah, basically it was like your definition of hell is like, and it was like, is when you come to death, and at like in moments before the death, you meet yourself, the version of yourself that lived to its fullest potential, right? And that, which of course that reflection would cause you then to look at all the things you did not do because of
Right.
all these things that you believed you couldn't do, that were the wrong thing to do, that were, because these people wouldn't approve of me, or I don't have this much, or I don't have this, blah, 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 or I'm not this kind of person. And all of these things. And think about that. Think about the moments. And it pings all of us. Like if you say, when you say that, like that totally pinged me. Like, I'm like, so true. Right.
And it's almost like the way I envision it is you see yourself held back by like a wisp of smoke, something that is so insignificant and really not even there.
Yeah.
But yet you give it that power.
Yeah. And all the
Or
things,
that control.
or all the things that yeah. And it's funny because as much as I have lived my life to do what I'm guided to do, right? And there are still moments where I hesitate, where I still like try to talk myself out of things and all that kind of stuff. But every time I've taken that leap of faith, so to speak, if I was so
Right.
guided and didn't follow the rules and just said, okay, I'm just going to do this, devil may care is like what people say, right? I'm just going to do it. It always works out. I usually somehow the money comes back to me like tenfold. Sometimes all this kind of stuff happens, or these things just align because I say, I'm not going to put any guidelines around it. I'm just going to trust and go and do it, or be this, or commit to this, or whatever. And then it all like just aligns. But it's funny because I found that in my life when I've said, oh no, before I commit to this, I need this, 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 and this aligned. It never happens.
Right. Well, and how convenient that is.
Right. Because I can easily then say, okay, well, see, look, it just didn't align and I'm just not going to do it. And I'm just going to owe it. And then afterward though, like what happens when you're at your deathbed and you see that version of you that did it and you're like, damn.
Right.
And now I see what would have happened. How would I had I taken that chance? And look at how it would have gone that way.
And what I can see that playing out is you see that on your deathbed and you go, okay, well, I'm going to go back another time and I'm not going to forget this time. And that's how we rope ourselves into continually
every freaking time. Because I swear, I think that's what happens when we go through our review process at the end of our life when we first live. Because I know like that's what we do. And when we leave the body, it's like we go through like this review process of the life that we've had. And yeah. And that's why we've done so many lives. And I guess I'm so determined I'm done doing this. I've done this so many times.
Right.
I'm just gonna do it as I'm guided, and screw it all.
And as we talked about this, and as we sat there and we have identified, all these things that we do, we talked about how once we've come to the understanding and realization of this is how we live, what if we stopped looking at our external world as our mirror or, reflection back, what if we looked at that as our vision board? And that's where we do our creations, is we start interpreting and saying, okay, well, I see that that's on my vision board, but I'd like it to look like this instead.
Mm-hmm.
And start shifting things that way and coming to the realization that there's something in my alignment that's holding this in place. Right. So if I can just shift my alignment, maybe I can change that from, A to B.
And that's how we did our entire vision board course at the beginning of the year, which is
exactly
shameless self-promotion on wonderland.site. So, and on sendingworld.net. So and that's where we focused on the feelings, the feels versus
right. And that's where I think we hold so much unconsciously.
Yes.
Is in that feeling, because the other stuff seems to be more in your face. Mm-hmm. And we've become so much more adept at denying or pushing down or ignoring emotions and feelings. They're almost easier to ignore,
right,
than things.
Right. Well, and because the logical mind says things trump everything, right?
Oh, right.
Because the logical mind is the ego and the things.
And it's like, it's here, I can touch it and feel it, so I can't deny it.
Right. Which is what limits us, because then we base it on things versus the feels. So, this is it's really talking about the same thing we've talked about 500 times, but in a different context of like how this really plays out in our everyday reality. And it's and many say, oh, this is just, it's like, and it's so funny because we'll always say, oh, I get that. I totally get that. And then you're faced with the next thing and you're like, oh no, I can't do that because this.
Because I'm stressed at the moment, I'm pushed for time. So I need to just go back to what I'm familiar with and step through these because it's worked for me before.
Yes.
And I just really need to power through this, push through this.
Right.
And, that brings us all the way back to that presence thing that we talk about all the time. It's like, okay, what's here for me in this second, in this moment, right now? Yep. What's the message here? What's my alignment here? How about changing it to that? What's my alignment in this present moment to create what I'm creating?
Yes.
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is. And so, yeah, it's because we tell ourselves, like, this brings forward all of these unconscious things that we run by. Like, so a lot of the stuff we talk about, yes, it is repetitive and it sort of goes around in the same 7 areas. Go figure.
Funny how that works.
Funny. But the reason we do that is every little shift in perspective gives us a bigger like holograph, right? And sometimes you need to say it 105 times to get it, right? Or you have to tell it to yourself 105 different ways until you finally say, oh, how did I miss that before, right? So, it's interesting because, we use different terms. We talk about manifesting and creating, but there are so many things, like we tell things like ourselves, things like, I'm not that kind of person. I don't have that. I'm not allowed to have that. Right. Or, I can't because I'm a woman, because I'm a man, because I'm this age, because I'm whatever, I'm blank, because I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough.
I'm not thin enough.
Not thin enough, right? I'm not curvy enough. There's just so many things that we say, and these are all rules that we then live by. So we can replace the word rules with beliefs, right?
Right.
These are beliefs that we live by, but then in our minds, they become rules because the beliefs are, I have to allow that belief to continue, that belief, I have to then structure my reality around this. And at some level, we know all of this, right?
Well, and that's, what supports those rules and reinforces those rules is our alignment,
Mhm.
because we shift our alignment to make sure those rules stay in place.
Yep.
So
And
if
so,
we back the truck up to the alignment.
right, and say, I just align with this creation beyond the rules, right? And allow that to happen. And I open all of those doors.
Right. And you take it back to the present moment, it's not as overwhelming because it's just that moment that you're looking at the alignment and what I'm creating and what the message is and what was the value in this moment.
Yeah.
And you shift and just look at it a moment at a time, present moment at a time, and it eventually translates into such big differences,
Yeah.
big expansions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So yeah, that's the thing for us to look at. Because like I said, you're right. We default back to things where, this is what we've done before. Right. And by
Right.
the
And I'm
way,
stressed. So I need quick response. I need to just fall back to where I'm comfortable because I'm so uncomfortable that I have to have a piece of comfort.
right. Right. And then what happens is then say we break a little, like maybe two of those law rules or beliefs or laws or whatever, right? Then we feel really uncomfortable because then there's a belief or a rule underneath it that says, if I break the rules, I'm going to get punished. So that means
Right.
I'm going to have to sacrifice something in some way, which is a belief and a rule in itself. So you see how this all it just turns into a tsunami, right?
Well, and it's one of those things that we've been so brilliant creating that it's self-reinforcing.
Yeah. Nicole says, yes, presence is important to expansion. I found that taking a breath helps me. Yes, no, taking 5 or 10 breaths is even better. It's like, just breathe. And I can't say how many times I've said that to people in the past year. It's just breathe, just take a moment.
Right. Well, because the only thing you can do when you're focused on your breathing is be in that moment. You can't be worried about this. You can't be thinking about this. You can only focus on your breath. And that brings you back to the body, brings you back to the present moment. I mean, that is presence.
Right. Right. So I think we pretty much hit the topic already today.
I mean, it's been so succinctly laid out.
Yeah. And it sounds easy. It sounds easy, but it's the actual, taking ourselves out, because we have so many rules ingrained, right? It's like we were talking about the rules last week, right? We have the rules of physics and the rules of,
Nature.
physicality, the rules of nature. And then we have the other beliefs that we then develop that become rules underneath it as well. And I have to be this within those rules, and I have to be this kind of form within those rules. And I have to.
Well, and then you layer in the social and the economic and the humanity rules. And it creates such a structure that we've created an entire reality.
And it's almost like I see, like my kids, when they were little, they used to like playing with colanders and put colanders over their head and wear them like little hats or whatever. It's like looking through the world through these little holes.
Right.
Or letting the world, bringing stuff into our world through these little tiny holes.
Right. Or, you're in a big dark warehouse and you have a really tiny little flashlight. You can't see where you really are. All you can see is what's highlighted in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of knowing it's all there at your disposal. What if I allowed it all in every moment? Right. And that breaks.
Immediately my mind goes, whoa.
I know. Because I was saying that breaks like a couple 100,000 rules right there.
Right. Well, it's like, how can I drink from that fire hose?
Well, because, when we say that every moment, right, the mind goes, whoa, right? Because like, oh no, that's too overwhelming. But that's almost like because we have the laws of time, right? And the laws of time are just the construct of measurement that we have, right?
Right.
And it's funny because I have my family little dinner, barbecue, whatever, last night. We had this whole conversation about time being completely constructed in the mind. And I love the best example is Star Wars.
Right.
Because they talk about, oh, well, at this point, Luke Skywalker was, 19 years old. So what does 19 years old mean in a galaxy far, far away on another planet and whatever? And when you're living intergalactically on, say, you're traveling through, I don't know, 12, 20 different planets and galaxies in a lifetime, then what is your measure of time?
Right. Well, and we define a year as one rotation around the sun.
Right.
But I was reading something about the planet Pluto, and it's like hundreds of thousands of our years for it to make one rotation around the sun. And it's like, so nobody lives to be a year old on Pluto.
Right. Right. So, like that's a big one. Cause then we think, oh, I can't have this all at once, which is a time construct thing. Right.
Right. Right. Well, and Nicole says, LOL, who wants to drink from a fire hose? But it's one of those things where it's like, we have that saying that says too much of anything is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, too much rain is bad. Too much sun is bad. Too much, darkness is bad. Too much light is bad. It's like all about that balance and everything. But those are just beliefs.
Mm-hmm. They are.
Those are just
beliefs based on the balance of the duality that we've created, which is still a rule and law that we decided to create.
And what you define as good. It's like good could be, I define good as it's dark 24/7.
Right. If you're a vampire.
Right. So that's that. Exactly. So it's all how you set up your rules of good and bad.
Right.
Which again comes back to alignment. It all comes back.
It does. It does. And then when we think, we think things like, oh, that's enough. Like even that little voice in the back of our head says, oh no, that's enough. That's good enough. I'm not going to push it. That's good enough.
Right. Because if I push it and it all falls apart, I'll regret that.
Right.
I should have been happy with this.
Right. And there's a difference of knowing there's more or knowing this is it. Right. There's a difference because it's like when it's the ego that says I need more to make myself feel better, more powerful or whatever, that's different than when you just say there is more for me to access in this moment. So allow me to do it if I'm so guided, right? Because we then can just put ourselves on guidance automation, right? Autopilot, auto guidance of,
right.
Okay, is it for me in this moment? Is it for me to do in this moment, right? To create this, is it for me to allow this in this moment? And then we get to a place.
To me, that asking for that guidance is the perfect test of your alignment. Mm-hmm. Because if you're asking, is it for me in this moment? It has to pass through your alignment. Mm-hmm. So the answer comes back as, well, you're aligned for this right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So it comes out. Yeah. So it all comes down to that. So the key is for us to not be afraid of, like, the thing is we fear breaking the rules, going back to what we were talking about last week, because we feel like we're going to get punished if we break the rules. We feel like, the whole thing is going to collapse if we break the rules, right? And the laws of physics and the laws of nature and the laws of this and then whatever, even though we know a lot of it's falling apart anyway, like you were saying last week, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, it's all part of the illusion anyway. So if we just accept all that and we say, okay, and that's truly this idea. And it's a challenging thing on an interchange that I had on social media this week. It was like people like judging something as good or bad. Well, when we stop judging something as good or bad and simply, is it what it's to be, right? Is it for me or is it for this situation or for that person? And we stop saying, okay, because it's cancer, because it's a chronic illness, because it's, abuse or some kind of limiting factor that somebody's gone through, we've decided to judge it with pity, right? Like there's something wrong with their journey. And we call that victimhood, but that's for our next podcast.
Right. Nicole has a comment. Time is a matter of perception. It expands to meet our needs. Moderation in daily life allows for periodic excess, except fun. We all deserve fun in our lives.
in every moment.
Right, right.
But
right.
you know what? That's another rule we live by, is I'm only allowed to have fun at these times.
Right. I can't have fun at work.
Oh, right. I have to be an adult, to be responsible, to be valuable in society. I can only have fun on weekends or, whatever.
Right.
That's what people, many believe, right? So when you get to a place of saying, I have fun and love my work, it just brings up my vibrance and excitement. And so I'm always playing. Work is easy
Right.
and paid amply to do it. Many won't allow themselves to do that, because they think it's not for me. That's not for me. I'm not, only special people are allowed that. I have to suffer through, I have to sacrifice to do this and all this kind of stuff. And how about this one? It's only worthy if I have to sacrifice for
Right.
something, right? It's only worthwhile if I, how to work hard for it.
Right. Yep.
So, well, there's so many things to unpack with that. But so let's just get right on to our clearing
Right.
of how do well, let's see. What I've been doing since we talked about this is basically I align with the fulfillment of my optimal potential. Like, I align with that beyond all the rules. Like, and I allow that to be,
Yes.
I allow that to be okay and okay with me. And I allow it to happen. And in fact, I embrace it and anticipate it, with joy, kind of thing.
Right. Awesome.
Of course, the ego goes, what?
Right.
Yeah. So, and I always say, but I just said I allow with joy and fun. Come on now. That's our whole sort of, right? But then, it all then depends on what we allow to be joyous and fun. That's another rule, right? So
True.
so all of that in a nice little bow.
Right.
All right, everybody, get yourself comfortable. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes as we step out of separation back into wholeness and oneness. And we hold ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we exist, create, and experience. All right. I felt like there was a lot going on there.
Yeah.
I felt good, but it was like, yeah, there's a lot more of this that needs to happen.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's that almost like a process.
Yeah.
Like, you clear out this section, which then breaks things in the next section, or we believe it does. So then you step through to that, and then it breaks things, and then it steps through, and it's like you keep accumulating this glut that you just keep pushing forward to
Right.
to clear out the alignment. That was it. I felt a lot in my solar plexus.
Yeah.
And when I looked, it was like, a hairball.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I kept on getting my stomach started, and I was like, wow, that was weird. Yeah, tingly. Yeah,
Well, that should be interesting to see how it plays out for everybody this week.
And next week, because we're going to be taking a week off next week.
That's right. So, because this is a big one. Need 2 weeks to process through this one.
Well, and then the next one, there'll be 2 weeks in between that one. So we're only doing 2 this month because you're
Right.
traveling next week. I'm traveling a couple of weeks. So yeah, these are big. This is a big month to allow this stuff to really, because I feel like these 2 topics, the next topic has to do with that victimhood, the belief of victimhood, and the rules around that, and breaking those rules and the alignment.
Right.
So sit with this and really come back to it on alignment, on where I am, meaning you and all of us, like where I am in. When I say I'm ready to create this, am I expecting it through these little tiny holes? And when I allow that in this moment to open up and be this big, gaping, huge, awesome hole of creation,
Right.
and allow all these possibilities that I would have never allowed because I stopped following the rules that I was reiterating somewhere in my subconscious mind. Well, then that's a lot to play with. I mean, there's a lot we can play with there.
Right.
A lot of fun. So everyone stick with that. Come back and do this again and again if you need to. Because it's always outside of space and time, as time is just a construct.
Right.
And let us know how you're doing, especially because there's going to be 2 weeks between this one and the next one. And
yes, please.
Any questions you have, any place you feel like you're stuck, or any insights you gain. And please, if you know others who can benefit from this, as always, please share it with them, pass it on.
Absolutely.
Because we're in it to help us as a
Right.
collective just as much as us individually.
Right. And be sure to follow us, because that way you can know when we go live, if you want to participate live, and you'll get updates. Like this week we shifted from Monday to Tuesday. So follow us.
Yep.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. We will see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni. Not next week, but the following week.
Yes. Well, I said next time. So yeah, 2 weeks.
Right. Right.
Signing off on this week's Living Ascension. Have a great one, everyone.